Every month, the same bill arrives. Lights, refrigerator, washing machine, phone chargers, internet router, heating fans, cooling fans, small appliances you barely think about until the power company reminds you what they cost. And the strange part is this. For more than a century, people have been living under one of the oldest power sources on Earth: wind. It moves across fields, over barns, through open farmland, along coastlines, and across rural ridges every single day. Long before solar panels became the symbol of energy independence, rural families already understood that moving air could pump water, charge batteries, grind grain, ventilate barns, and run small machines. But today, when people talk about generating power at home, they usually think of one thing: solar panels, panels on the roof, batteries in the garage, a contractor, a permit, a multi-thousand-dollar system. And if the roof is shaded, the panels are dirty, the batteries are too expensive, or the sun disappears for days, the promise of free power starts to look a lot less simple. That is why an forgotten idea keeps coming back. A small wind turbine, not the giant three-blade machines you see in commercial wind farms. A compact vertical axis turbine that can spin from wind coming from different directions, sit near a barn, workshop, cabin, or open property, and feed power into a small battery bank without needing the grid every hour of the day. And according to old rural builders, versions of these systems were once simple enough to build from ordinary materials, cheap enough to repair, and useful enough to keep lights, fences, pumps, radios, and tools running in places where grid power was either unavailable, unwanted, or too expensive. So why did this idea almost disappear? The answer is not that wind stopped working. The answer is that small wind never fit neatly into the modern energy business. A power company does not make money when a farm produces its own electricity. A large solar installer does not make money from a homemade turbine beside a shed. And a modern homeowner has been trained to think electricity is something that comes from either the grid, the roof, or a very expensive battery. But older rural households thought differently. They looked at the land first. Was the property open? Was there steady wind? Was there a barn roof, a tower, a ridge, or a field edge where the air moved freely? If the answer was yes, wind was not a theory. It was a resource. The vertical axis turbine became interesting because it solved one problem that ordinary windmills often struggled with. Wind does not always come politely from one direction. On open land, it can shift. Around buildings, it can swirl. Along barns and fences, it can curl, break, and return in bursts. A traditional horizontal turbine wants to face the wind. It usually needs a tail, yaw mechanism, or clean wind direction to perform well. A vertical axis turbine is different. Its blades spin around a vertical shaft, so it can accept wind from multiple directions without turning the whole machine to face it. That does not make it magical, and it does not mean it works everywhere, but it does make it appealing for farms, workshops, and simple off-grid setups where the goal is not powering a city. The goal is independence. A few lights during an outage, a charged battery bank, a pump in the right conditions, a freezer protected during a storm, a workshop that is not completely dependent on the utility line. That is why these small systems survived in rural corners longer than most people realize. Not because they beat every solar panel in every situation, but because they worked when the land matched the machine. And that is the part modern energy marketing often skips. Solar is predictable. It is easy to sell. It sits flat on a roof, looks clean, and produces power whenever enough sunlight hits it. For many homes, especially in suburbs, solar makes more sense than wind. But wind has one advantage solar will never have. It can work in the dark. At night, when solar panels stop completely, the wind may still be moving. During winter, when days are shorter and storms pass through, a small turbine in the right location can still produce power. For a rural property with open exposure, wind and solar can support each other instead of competing. That is why the old idea was never really wind instead of solar. It was wind when solar sleeps. But the small wind market had real problems. Some turbines were sold with wild promises. Some were mounted too low, where wind was weak and turbulent. Some were placed on rooftops in suburbs, surrounded by trees, fences, chimneys, and neighboring houses. Then owners wondered why they barely produced anything. Others were poorly built, noisy, difficult to maintain, or simply too small to match the claims on the box. And once enough people bought bad systems, the reputation of home wind suffered. That is where the truth gets interesting. Small wind did not fail because the idea was useless. It failed because it was oversold to the wrong homes. A turbine does not care about a sales pitch. It cares about wind speed. It cares about open space. It cares about height, turbulence, maintenance, blade design, bearings, wiring, and whether the property actually has enough moving air to justify the machine. Put the right turbine in the wrong place, and it becomes decoration. Put a modest turbine in the right place, and it can quietly become one of the most useful pieces of equipment on the property. This is why the old rural version made more sense than the modern gadget version. The old builder was not trying to sell one turbine to every homeowner in every neighborhood. He was reading the land: open field, steady wind, clear path, useful load, simple battery, repairable parts. That is a completely different mindset from buying a boxed product online and expecting it to replace the power company overnight. Still, the dream remains powerful. Imagine a small turbine spinning beside a barn while the house is quiet at night. No sunlight, no engine, no fuel delivery, no monthly charge for the wind passing over your own land. Just a rotor turning slowly above the field, feeding a battery that runs the basic things a home needs when the grid goes down. That image is why people keep returning to this technology. Because even if it cannot power every home for free, the idea challenges. Something modern life taught us to accept: that electricity must always come from someone else. For farms, cabins, homesteads, coastal properties, windy ridges, and open rural land, small wind can still be part of the answer. Not as a miracle, not as a toy, and not as a magic $119 box that ignores physics, but as a forgotten tool. A tool that works only when the conditions are right. A tool that should never have been sold as a universal solution, but also should never have been dismissed as impossible. The real tragedy is not that everyone stopped using small wind turbines. The real tragedy is that we stopped thinking about energy as something local. The sun on the roof, the wind across the field, the water moving downhill, the heat stored in the earth. The resources were always there. But modern life turned energy into a subscription, something measured, billed, packaged, and sold back to us by companies we rarely question. Older rural households did not think that way. They used what the land gave them: wind for motion, wood for heat, water for pressure, shade for cooling, cellars for storage. And when something broke, they repaired it instead of replacing the whole system. That is the deeper lesson behind the forgotten wind turbine. It is not just about a spinning machine. It is about remembering that independence was once built from simple systems working together. A small turbine will not save every home. But on the right property, in the right wind, with the right expectations, it can do something modern energy companies would rather you forget. It can turn empty air into useful power. And once you see that, the monthly electric bill starts to feel different. Not inevitable, not natural, not the only way. Just the price of forgetting that some of the energy we pay for was passing over our homes all along.